So back when I first started this particular YouTube channel, roughly 4 years ago, I put out a video entitled, Ignore This Sale. Rare Super Mario Bros Nintendo game sells for $100,150. This was a video that I did in response to the announcement that a sticker-sealed copy of Super Mario Bros, graded by WATA Games in 9.4 condition, sold through a private sale for over $100,000. This was also the start of the metamorphic rise in prices for graded video games. If you want, I'm going to put a link to this particular video in the video description below, and you can watch it until your heart's content. Again, this particular video did not get a lot of views simply because it was put out when I first started this YouTube channel, and as a result, a lot of people didn't even know I existed back then. Now, what does this have to do with what's going on in the antiques and collectibles trade today? Well, one of the things that I've always warned people about, because I learned this from my mentors in the trade, is that almost every single sale that occurs in the antiques and collectibles trade that is not sold through a public auction, that is not sold through a dealer website where they list sold items and the prices they received for them on a regular basis, every single transaction that occurs between a buyer and a seller is usually private. Private transactions, contrary to popular belief, because right now in the year 2024, everyone's online, everyone's on social media, everybody bids up items on heritage auctions, Hakes auctions, Morphe's auctions, Comic Link, whatever website you prefer. You can see this all occurring in real time. Make no mistake, the majority of transactions that occur on a daily basis in the antiques and collectibles trade are private sales that occur between a buyer and a seller, a buyer and a dealer, somebody of those two participating groups. Remember, in order to have economic activity of any kind, you have to have a buyer and a seller that agree on a price. That's what causes a transaction to take place. So again, if an item is selling outside of an auction house, it is most likely a private transaction. If you want proof, those of you, I'll use this as a great example. Those of you that collect vintage comic books, Greg Reese is probably one of the best dealers you can deal with on a regular basis. If you collect, if you invest in high-grade vintage comic books. Greg Reese also has an excellent website that you guys can check out. Just Google Greg Reese comic books, okay? If you find a book that you like, and let's say it's listed on his website for $9,000, just using this as an example, you have a choice. You can buy it for $9,000 outright, or in certain cases, if you think he may be willing to accept less, you can put in an offer, or you can email him outright and say, hey, I really love this comic book. I'm willing to give you $8,500, not the $9,000 that you want for it. Can we work out a deal? And maybe Greg Reese comes back and he says, you know what? I'll take the $8,500. Or maybe he says to you, you know what? Right now, the way the market's going with that particular book, maybe I'll sell it to you for $8,750. That way you're not paying the full $9,000. I'm going to cut you a deal. I'm going to let you have it for $8,750. What do you say? If you agree to that transaction, guess what? That was a private transaction. That sale does not need to be made public. Now, to be fair, comic books may be a bad example here because we all know about GPA. We do know that specific dealers report their pricing data to GPA. So in regards to that, in that particular case, that particular sale could be made public. But it's not being made public to pump up the value of comic books, to put hype into the market and get the little Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters excited for a specific collecting category or a specific grading company. Or, in the case of WATA Games and the Super Mario 64, to get the little Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters excited that their vintage video games can be encapsulated by this new company, and because they're graded by this specific new grading company, that obviously means that the particular items are worth so much more than going through VGA or another lesser known grading company. Do you see where I'm going here? Now, to be fair, I want to make this very clear. I am not saying that this always leads to market manipulation. I'm not saying that there's always shenanigans going on behind the scenes when we talk about some of these private sales that are now made public. But in certain instances in the antiques and collectibles trade, you need to understand there is a fine line between market hype and market manipulation. And always remember, these are emotional assets, guys. All of us have an emotional attachment to these items in one way or another. And that emotional attachment can get us to make bad investment, bad business decisions. This is why I warn you guys. If you're putting all your money in emotional assets or even assets, we talked about this, with no underlying cash flows, you guys that love Bitcoin, you guys that love gold, silver, you're making a very bad mistake for this particular reason. It is very hard in certain instances to value these particular items. And there's a reason that private sales are made public. You know, when I started in the antiques and collectibles trade at the ripe old age of 12, my mentors always told me, be very cautious of private sales. If that particular information is being put out there, there is a reason it's being put out there, especially if not all the participants are being known. Meaning, in this particular case that we're going to be talking about in this video, the particular buyer is undisclosed. Now, obviously, that is not uncommon when we talk about items that are being sold for record sums, especially when you start getting into 6 figures, 7 figures, hell, in certain cases when we talk rare coins, 8 figures. When we talk about high-end art, 9 to 10 figures. It gets mind-boggling when you start to get up that high. In those particular instances, I get it why the buyer doesn't want to be known. Just like we saw Action Comics 1 sold for $6 million through Heritage Auctions. Obviously, Heritage Auctions can't release the name of the buyer or the bidder. When I go and bid and stuff on Heritage Auctions or Hakes Auctions or Morphe's Auctions or whatever auction house I'm using at any given time, I don't want my identity to be known. I don't want people to go, hey, that was Reserved Investments. Let's talk about this. Reserved Investments just paid $3,000 for this rare Star Wars proof card, or Reserved Investments just paid $12,000 for this rare coin. In that particular case, obviously, it's up to the buyer to share that information that he partook in that particular auction. The auction company isn't doing anything wrong by listing completed auction sites on their website. I want to make that very clear. There's nothing wrong with that data being out there, even though the buyers, or the bidders in this case, are anonymous. There is a thin line between market hype and market manipulation. Now, why are we having this discussion now that we're almost 9 minutes into this video? Well, if you're unaware, on April 29th, 2024, news broke through the CGC card grading website that a Black Lotus graded by CGC in pristine 10 condition sold for $3 million. Now, immediately I got the news release and I'm like, oh, did I miss a high profile auction? How did this sell? And of course, if you read the particular article, the transaction took place in a private sale between Pristine Collectibles and an undisclosed buyer. Now, I want to be very clear here. I am not saying that there was any shenanigans going on in this regard. I am not saying that there's any form of market manipulation going on here. I want to make that very clear. This was most likely an 100% legit sale. I want to be very clear. The problem that I have here, though, is that it is a private sale being made public. Now, obviously, when we look at this, both Pristine Collectibles and CGC have a vested interest in making this private sale public information. For one, it helps Pristine Collectibles because he brokered the sale. And kudos to him. He deserves getting credit for that. Again, I'm not cutting up anybody in this video. I'm not making it seem like these individuals did anything wrong. I want to make that very clear. But it does help Pristine Collectibles, and obviously it helps CGC grading because let's be realistic. Now people are going to look at this and go, well, gee, the most expensive Black Lotus ever sold wasn't graded by PSA. It wasn't graded by BGS. It was graded by CGC in pristine 10 condition. That gives a lot of confidence to their grading service. Again, CGC isn't doing anything wrong here. I want to make that very clear. You guys know if you watch this channel, I often get accused from the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters that I love CGC, that I love PCGS, that I love all these grading companies. And to be fair, I've said this before. Grading, third-party grading, when done right, is a necessary evil in the antiques and collectibles trade. It's just like those of you like me that are educated in finance. The Fed is a necessary evil for our economy, the way it is, to function properly. And again, a lot of the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters out there that turn on the news and they go, oh, gee, I'm trying to buy a house. Now I got to pay a 7% mortgage rate. They don't understand why they're paying a 7% mortgage rate. They do not understand the basics as to how a lot of these markets work. And when we talk about the antiques and collectibles trade, if we're looking at these markets from a financial perspective, which, spoiler alert, if you're watching Reserved Investments, that's what we do all day long on this particular channel. You need to have an understanding of finance. You need to be able to detach yourself from your emotions and look at these markets appropriately as they really are. And in this case, where I'm going with this, you guys need to ignore this particular sale. It makes no difference on the grand scheme of things on how these markets are going moving forward, simply because this was a private sale, a private transaction that was made public. As a result, there's a reason why it was made public. And we just went over those reasons. They're very good for CGC, they're very good for Pristine Collectibles, and they're very good for the market overall. Let's be realistic. This sale is most likely 100% legit. Somebody did most likely pay $3 million for this particular card. Since they did that, it at least shows that there's confidence in this market. Somebody who has an extremely high net worth was prepared and willing to drop $3 million in this market. But if you're a Timmy, a Kimmy, a Poindexter, a casual collector, a high-profile investor operating in this market, this sale, the news of this sale, should mean nothing to you. You should not attempt to buy or sell based on this transaction, based on this news. One sale does not a market make. This is the same advice I have been giving since I started this particular YouTube channel. And even if something sells at auction price for record sum, like if we want to talk about the Action Comics 1 that sold for $6 million, a lot of Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters get excited and they think because an Action Comics 1 sold for $6 million, it means the vintage comic book market is booming and now their comic books are going up in value. I'm sorry, even if you have an Action Comics 1, your particular Action Comics 1 did not sell for $6 million. Please do not equate the value of your item with one, even if it's in similar condition, that just sold at auction. The antiques and collectibles trade does not work that way. It is not an efficient market. That's why I do these videos. So in closing here, I want to be clear that you guys understand where I'm going with this. I am not suggesting that there is any shenanigans or craziness with this particular sale. As a matter of fact, I give congrats to both CGC and Pristine Collectibles, who I both have a lot of respect for. I also want to make that very clear. What I am saying is because this is a private sale that was just made public. Check your feelings, check your nostalgia at the door, because in the grand scheme of things, this sale means absolutely nothing for the vintage Magic the Gathering market going forward. Thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like these type of videos, please consider subscribing to this particular YouTube channel because, again, spoiler alert, this is a collectibles finance channel. We look at the antiques and collectibles trade through the lens of a financial investor. If that triggers you, good. Feel free to create videos about reserve investments, how he doesn't know how these markets work. And I will sit here and laugh at you. Until next time, thank you so much.